It was 1861. The Civil War had begun. I was a widow with 2 young girls, and our small group of Catholic families first met at my home. We would meet whenever time allowed. We had no leader, and maybe every other month or so, a traveling priest from Cincinnati would stop and perform Mass. So, we just took turns reading and discussing the Bible.
The Burns home was located on Church Street, just 300 feet south of the town hall, which is now the police station. Today, the location where the house stood is now part of the parking lot behind the stores on Main Street.
Other families beside ours hosted the Masses over the years. Most notably, the Lawrence Sater family, who lived in a log cabin at the far east end of Wooster Street, and the Timothy Lawler family, who lived on Summit Street south of where the church was built. Mr. Lawler, he was a Civil War veteran who returned to Bowling Green after being wounded and disabled while in action. The last place we would gather was the Herman Wieben home, located on the 2nd floor over his business on South Maple Street. Mass was set up there until 1881, when the first church was built. As a result of our efforts, Bowling Green was designated as a station attached to St. Joseph's Church in Maumee. We finally had a priest assigned to say Mass here.
In 1861, I began making the first somewhat regular visits to Bowling Green Station and performed the first Mass at the Burns family home. The trip was treacherous and took about 3 hours each way with the horse and carriage, or on horseback when the trails were almost impossible to navigate. Then I would stay in their home overnight before returning home the next day. The Germans, French, and Irish were the 3 most prominent ethnic families in Bowling Green. They would try to have me commit to staying with one of their families whenever I would be scheduled to come to Bowling Green.
Ultimately, we decided on the corner of Clough and South Enterprise, and the church was built at the cost of $2,500. The lumber was harvested on the farms of the parishioners and brought into the Bigelow family sawmill next door to be cut for construction.
By 1894, our church membership had grown to 65 families, and Father William Kress was our spiritual leader.
It was apparent that our congregation was outgrowing the size of the original church. So in 1894, we built an addition to the back end of the building that added another 30 feet of space for parishioners to worship in.
Another improvement was the addition of stained glass windows that surrounded the church with their beauty. When the church was first constructed, it was too expensive to consider stained glass, so colored paper was taped to each window to make it seem more church-like. Each of the new windows cost the enormous sum of $8 when they were purchased. We also improved the entrance to the church to welcome all that came to worship in our building.
When I was called to St. Aloysius, the bigotry was still rampant. Although most of the KKK's hate was aimed at the Negroes, their hate extended to immigrants, Catholics, and Jews. These feelings were fanned by the local newspaper and some local businessmen.
Parish suffered a real loss with the departure of Father Goebel in 1923. The plans for our new church were well underway, and the fundraising was well over $35,000. John T. Combs, whose work also included the Rosary Cathedral in Toledo, was the chief architect. Unfortunately, Mr. Combs died of cancer before the project was completed. His partner, William G. Perry, is listed as the architect. Groundbreaking for the new building was April 24th, 1924.
It was quite a challenge to join a project that had been in the works for many years. Trying to get the cost of the new structure down to a manageable amount was very difficult, and there had to be severe cuts in some areas, but we got it done.
The construction was coming along nicely, and the laying of the cornerstone was scheduled for June 29th, 1924. It was an exciting time for the congregation to seeing the results of years of planning actually happening.